You would hear people saying, that one, she's positive. She's positive.
I remember this time, I could tell my friend, mi nataka tu kukufa. And yuko zile za, wewe nataka kukufa aje? Like, haezi understand. Why am I saying that may want to die?
Hata kuna wakati ikija juu, hata juzi anasema I don't see the life. I don't see, I better die.
One of my bosses said, if she was given lupus and AIDS, should take the AIDS and really go very far, very far. I grew up, it wasn't known really that I had lupus. I didn't even know what lupus was. From childhood, I was very temperamental. Any small wound would cause me not to sleep, and it would cost me so much. There was a doctor who looked at my scar on the body and asked me, you had these wounds, and what was causing it? He told me there's a test he needed to do. He was going to find out from that test whether what he was suspecting. After 2 weeks, when I went back, he called me, and the other time he told me, have you ever heard of lupus? Honestly, I had not, no. So he looked so sadly at me in the eyes and told me, Gertrude, you have lupus. He told me, sadly, it's not treatable. We only manage. And then, for me, it wasn't anything. anything that would worry me. So it was until I started Googling, you know, the more I Googled, that's when I knew it was very sad that I had lupus. And that is where my hardest journey started.
I used to be a very, playful girl. Like all the games I used to play. Then it reached a point, my mom saw that maybe something bad will happen, maybe I'll get pregnant. Then she decided to take me to boarding. So I went to boarding when I was in class 4. Then I went back to public school, the day school. Then class 7 and 8, I went to boarding school again. So that is where my journey with lupus started. And I remember one time, I could wake up in the morning and I could find my joints in pain and they're swollen. And at some point even they could turn to me blue, because the place where I was schooling, it was cold, it was very cold. My mom was called from the school and I was taken to hospital. And the first doctor that checked me up, she said that I had arthritis. I was given medicine. So there's this time, it was visiting day, and my mom saw that my fingers were, there's a certain way that they were forming. And so she was worried. Then akaniambia, mbona unaform vidole hivyo? Mimi nikamwambia mimi sijui, but every time I could fold them the right way, zilikuwa zinaenda tu, and she took me back to another doctor. Then another doctor said that I be given some spring so that my hands could go back to normal. So that time we didn't have money, so the springs were hard to get. So I went back to school. Then I was in class 8. I started developing a rash in my eyes, here in my cheek. So my aunt is a nurse. So my mom contacted her. She took me to another doctor in Kenyatta. So he suggested that I do some tests, which I went and did. And the test came positive that I had lupus.
Ni mama ya Abiud Bora ambao amegojeka for a long time. Alizaliwa akiwa watano katika the family, na kabla ya kupatwa na hii ugonjwa alikuwa mtu very handsome. Hata nikafurahia, alisoma vizuri, lakini baada ya muda akaanza kugojeka akiwa high school.
Lakini hatukujua ni nini ambacho kilikuwa kusudi ya mahangaiko hayo yote, lakini niliendelea tu kunywa madawa na kufuata mashauri ya daktari mpaka mahali ambapo nililemewa sana. Nikiingia college from 2006 ndio niliingia college mara ya kwanza. Nilikuwa nasomea motor vehicle artisan, lakini sikumaliza pia kwa sababu mguu wangu ulikuwa unaniuma sana, na njia ambayo nilikuwa nafanya ni kuchoma, na mara mingi nilikosa kwenda college kwa sababu ya mguu. Hata ikafika mahali ambapo ilibidi nitoke college kidogo alafu nirudi baadaye niliposikia vizuri.
Kuanza shule tukarudi Kenyatta, no diagnosis. Sasa ikija 2013 alianza sasa kubadilika kabisa, mikono ikaanza kuja kama imekujana sasa. Nilifanya kazi mingi sana, manake alikuwa nalala hapa kwa hii kiti, mikono ikaanza kwenda hivi. Mimi nifanye masaji, nimfanye mguu masaji. Nikamwambia sasa, what we can do now, naona hii mambo ni too much. Mimi nilikuwa mgonjwa, ndio nikampendekeza aende aone daktari ambao alinitibu huko Coptic. Alifanya x-ray ikaonekana. Baada ya x-ray akamwambia yeye ugonjwa wake hauko kwa boni, uko kwa damu. So akamtuma kwa wanaitwa rheumatism doctor. So doctor, it took time because alisema lazima afanywe investigation, and investigation lab test ilikuwa very very costly. So ilikaa kama 2 months before we get the money.
Ndio nikafanyiwa test hospitali, nikapatikana niko na lupus. Ilinisumbua sana, lakini tukaanza kufuata medication.
Baada ya medication, it was very very serious again, because kijana wangu sasa ni kama aliharibika huko. Mnaweza kuangalia nyumba muone there is nothing. Alikuwa na flares, picha zote alikuja hapo.
Hii flares ndio ilinisumbua sana. Miaka karibu 5 nilikuwa natoa makelele, navunja vitu, lakini daktari akajaribu kunisaidia mpaka polepole ikaenda kiisha, lakini haikuwa rahisi kwa sababu ilikuja mara kwa mara. Saa zingine nashindwa kukula, nikiletewa chakula na mwaga. Saa zingine ni makelele, lakini baada ya muda ilikuja polepole, ikiisha polepole nikitumia hiyo dawa, mpaka ikafika mahali alibadilisha dawa. Sasa ile nilianza kukunywa, ilinisaidia.
Hii ugonjwa unajificha sana, na kuna wengine labda mnaweza kuwa na ugonjwa na usijue, because hata sisi all those years hatukujua. Hata nikauliza daktari, what is the lupus? Akaniambia they don't know, but it's body fight itself. Nikamuuliza what is the body fight itself? Akaniambia they are doing the research tujue ni nini. So hata many doctors even they don't know about the lupus. So tuko hivyo, tumeshukuru, naendelea na madawa. The medication is very 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 expensive.
So lupus is a very interesting disease. It's often misunderstood, and a disease that I think a lot of people don't know much about. So if I was to break it down in terms of what lupus is, it's an autoimmune disease. So when you say autoimmune disease, you mean that the immune system, which is supposed to be defending us, is unable to differentiate between the normal cells and germs. So when you have these autoimmune diseases, the body actually attacks itself, the immune system. So by attacking itself, basically it means that it can affect any part of the body, from the brain, heart, blood. Essentially that's what it is. So in terms of the cause, we are not really sure why or what causes lupus. What has been noted that it is very common amongst ladies. Actually, before menopause, the rates are about 9 ladies for 1 man. After menopause, it's about 3 females for 1 man. So we suspect there could be a role of estrogen. because that is what is distinct, but we're not really sure. We've also found that it is very common amongst young people, usually age group about 20 to about 50. And this is very sad because this is like the active time of people's lives, and it's a time when they should be working. And some of the symptoms, as we discuss as we move along, have a big impact in terms of the quality of life for some of our patients. So it has been thought that in terms of the causes, that there may be a role of genetics. And when we say genetics, it's not that it runs in the family, but actually more of your DNA or the genes that you have within you put you at risk for developing the disease. So when you have the genetic predisposition, meaning your gene is a problem with the gene, when a trigger happens, it wakes up the disease. So triggers could be things like infections. Most time we find one is viral infections. 2, it could be, for ladies, can be a landmark moment, maybe menopause, or maybe around the time for pregnancy, conception, and also maybe sometimes around menarche. But to be honest, it's just theory here and there. We are not really sure about what causes. Other factors that have been found to be associated in terms of the cause is environmental factors. Still research, nothing much can be concretely put. So in short, in a nutshell, we have a genetically predisposed individual, means a problem with the genes, more in ladies, young ladies, a role of estrogen, possibly, and a bit of environmental factors. So in terms of symptoms, because it's an autoimmune disease, it is more, actually the full name is systemic lupus erythematosus. So meaning it can affect any part of the body, and it's actually a systemic disease. If you go back in history, SLE was, actually lupus was coined from a Latin word meaning wolf bite, because initially the patients would present with a rash here, which resembled a wolf bite, and thus the name systemic lupus erythematosus. But if you were to go in terms of the symptoms, from research done here locally, we have some papers published here from Kenyatta. We found that most of the people who have lupus are more likely to be young ladies, and they have a lot of fever, fatigue, joint problems, and joint problems usually is pain of the joints. They also tend to have a lot of, we call them hematological abnormalities. So hematological abnormalities, to put it in simple terms, is blood issues. Either to take, for example, low blood, we call that anemia. Sometimes they could have low platelets. Platelets is what used to form blood clots, it could be down, or it could have reduced white cells, we call that leukopenia. So it could affect the brain. It can also affect the heart, the lungs. Usually there, it can actually induce water. We call that an effusion. And so I've seen a few cases of patients who have had recurrent episodes of water in the lungs or water in the heart. They have been drained, but they keep recurring. So for such a patient, you should also think about lupus. Other rarer manifestations are sometimes they could present with obstruction of the intestines, but it's a rare presentation. Sometimes can present with liver injury. We call that hepatitis. One last thing which is something which you need to think about is that I'll give you the case. I once saw a lady who had actually lost 6 pregnancies. So usually the saying is that if you lose at least more than 2 pregnancies, even 1 pregnancy, especially within the first 3 months, you should be able to start thinking about could this be lupus. Other rare manifestations for lupus include blood clots. We've seen patients who come with unexplained strokes in the brain because of the blood clot, or unexplained clots in the lungs, or unexplained clots in the heart, like a heart attack in short. So as you can see, the presentation is very, very varied. And why this is important is because in terms of how the diagnosis is made is a bit of a challenge. In the West, we have data saying that it may take up to 6 years in terms of diagnosis for lupus. Locally, the data that we have ranges between 0 to about 13 years. So as you can see, it takes a long time before the diagnosis is made. And usually the problem is that it depends on what type of presentation the patient has. Take, for example, a patient who comes with fever, fatigue, weight loss. In an African setup, the first thing is HIV or malignant or cancer. But HIV is more common, and you find patients that will come and see me probably have like a battery or a number of HIV negative tests. And also because they have the fever and the fatigue, when the when the blood tests are done, they notice also they have reduced white cell count, the one that defend you. So people assume that is what? It's HIV. So diagnosis can be a bit of a challenge.
Lupus is something that will bring you down financially, relationship, and all, because it all has to do with interaction. You'll find that you don't feel like talking to people, or if you be with people, maybe the way someone will be talking, or they irritate you. You tend to operate from the norm. And then you're always on medication. I was waiting for my death, but God, being who He is, I was taken to a foundation where all the peas are there, and whenever I would go, you would see yourself like if you think your situation is bad, you would find yourself that you are better than so many other people.
Pande ya pesa, anatumia pesa mingi sana, vitu zile alikuanga nazo anauza kwa sababu yapate hizo madawa apone, na sisi hatuonangi hizo vitu mzuri. Tunajaribu kusaidia na hapa na hapa na hapa, lakini wajaribu kushughulikia mgonjwa kwa familia, wasione kwanza ati huyo mtu kwa sababu kwa mgonjwa waanze kufikiria vile wanafanya, wataki kukuja kumuassist. Sasa kitu nitawaambia sana wakuje kumuassist, kwa sababu sio ugonjwa ile amedifanya.
With the medication, they are very costly, and I thank God for the SCLAD organization, the NGO, because it has really helped us a lot. Because in terms of medicine, if you don't have medicine, if you don't have, money for the test and also for the appointment, they're also there to give a hand and also to support.
It started in the year 2013, and through a lady called Ann Lillian. She's a Kenyan nurse living in the US. She was diagnosed with 3 autoimmune diseases, and it is after that she found the need of starting this organization, because many people living with autoimmune diseases, many of their cases goes unheard, like they are very rare cases, especially when it comes to scleroderma and lupus as well. So these are cases that go unnoticed, and so she saw the need of starting this organization so that she can spread awareness and create awareness out there in case people would be might be asking themselves what these diseases are all about. We are bridging the gap between medication and these warriors, because you can imagine a case where a lupus warrior has to spend a monthly cost of around 100,000. That is only on medication. this person needs to see a specialist doctor, because lupus affect different parts of the bodies. So you find these people end up seeing different specialists. Someone might see a specialist when it comes kidneys issues, someone might be having chest issues. So at the end of the day, they end up spending even more than that 100,000 when it comes to their treatment, that is. So we came to bridge that gap as CLAD by negotiating prices for these warriors, visiting pharmacies and negotiating price when it comes to getting subsidized prices of medication, visiting these various specialists to get subsidized prices when it comes to consultation fees, having creating a rapport with different laboratories so that these people can be given, again, subsidized prices when it comes to lab tests, because lab tests are very costly for people living with autoimmune diseases. So that's where we come in as CLAD.
I think number one, we need cheaper tests, preferably even subsidized, because these tests are very expensive. ENA is 20,000. We need something cheaper. Number two, some of the drugs we use are used in other fields. I'll give you, for example, like methotrexate. Methotrexate is used in cancer, and there they'll get it free or subsidized. Why can the same be applicable for lupus patients? Other drugs like rituximab. Rituximab can be used in cancer, can be used in our field. So we are trying to see how the government can also include some of our patients in those particular programs. Other ways they can help. I was fortunate enough to travel out to study outside the country. The government where I was in would be able to give the caregiver a salary to take care of the family, the patient actually, sorry. So by taking care of the patient, the idea was if the patient is taken care of well, they are not in hospital, so they save money. So that's something which is to consider also. I think that can also go a long way. And also the patients will get money, at least they get some sort of support, because a lot of the patients will end up losing jobs. The disease is expensive, it's a burden, and set up people die early because of such things. So I think that's something which the government can do can pick up.
As an organization, we are self-sponsored currently, though we're still working on looking for sponsorships and donation as well. So maybe people might be asking how we are going about the funds and all that. So how we are getting our funds is we normally sell merchandise. We have branded merchandise, lupus awareness merchandise, hoodies, t-shirts, bracelets, and those are some of the things that we sell to the public out there. And all the proceeds, every single coin goes towards our project, or rather goes towards our cause. And it has, so far, as much as that is not really enough, but we also have donations from friends. We have people who we normally hold small fundraisers that normally helps us to at least get something to be able to sort out our cases.
The majority of our patients are ladies. One very contentious issue usually comes about in terms of childbearing. And childbearing usually is when is the right time, okay? And the right time for a patient is that we need to sit down and tell them that if your disease has been stable for at least 6 months and you're on the right baby-friendly medicines, you can get the go-ahead to conceive. Research has shown that if your disease has been erratic, or we've had some repeated flares within 6 months before conception, the outcome usually is poorer. Even there's a study that was done in Africa, they did a review in just lupus in pregnancy, and one thing came out very strong is that in the African setup, there's a lot of societal pressure in terms of giving birth, everything at the right time, and a lot of people don't understand the fact that with lupus, it's not like other people who you deliver today, deliver tomorrow. It's a process. And that's why it's very unfortunate when a patient comes and sees you and they've lost multiple pregnancies, and it's possibly because of the societal pressure or the in-laws giving you pressure where the babies. Certain contraceptives are bad for lupus patients, and the ones we're looking for are the ones that have got estrogen. And two ways. One, because the estrogen ones put the patients at an increased risk for flares. Two, put them at an increased risk for blood clots. And then three, because of the estrogen and everything, also puts them at an increased risk for bone loss. And bone loss is important because women, as they approach menopause, when the periods end and everything, the rate of bone loss is faster. And these are some of the things we need to discuss with our patients. And we try as much as possible to let them know.
I believe one day that I'll have a family of my own, because I've been rejected also for relationship because of lupus, because there's a possibility for ladies, if you have lupus and when you get pregnant, there's a possibility that you'll get a miscarriage. So I believe one day I'll have my own kid, I'll have a family. So my advice to the ladies out there who have lupus, that it is not the end of the world. You can live a normal life, you can be beautiful. The first healing point is accepting who you are.
Having lupus haijanibadilisha kama nikiwa mwanaume. Nahisi tu sawa na mingle na watu. Hata wengine naona ni kama hawajui niko na condition yoyote, wanaona niko sawa.
Mtu anapitia hali kama ya mama, asikufe moyo, akuwe strong. Ukiwa strong utakuwa sawa. Yeah.
A lot of patients really suffer because the disease has a lot of issues, from cost implications, they are not able to work, cost implications from the treatment, to other issues like fatigue, to childbearing. Imagine losing so many pregnancies can really be depressing. Fatigue can also be depressing. So I think I'd like to give a kudos to the caregivers who are doing a good job in terms of helping the patients. And for the patients who are feeling sad, stay strong. I know it's not easy. We can only imagine what you're going through. It's not easy, but stay strong. And that's where they call themselves lupus warriors. And I think going forward, I think there should be a role to strengthen more of their patient support groups. There are very many patient support groups out there. I think it's about time, because ultimately the objective is to improve care for our patients. I think it's about time they have just one group. If you have one group, it will be easier to push your agenda. It will be easier for the government to do what? To listen to you.
Lupus is not a death sentence. There are people who have been having lupus from way back, and they're still living their normal life. So any person out there who has someone who is experiencing such like symptoms, please don't ignore them. These people need love. These people need embrace. These people need you. Need someone who really cares.